I've been involved in the Mahwah Ramsey community for 18 years. We started our first business 18 years ago in Ramsey, and we've been there since. We've added acupuncture. I started off as a physical therapist. I'm also an acupuncturist. We added acupuncture about 7 or 8 years ago. In February, we're adding chiropractic to our services. So it's a really exciting time for our business. Now, today's topic is supposed to be biology of stress. Now, my goal for everybody to see, oh, it's up. What do I do now?
Right.
Now? Oh, I gotta finish that. Okay. All right. And then how do I erase?
There's an eraser.
Click
Show
on
him.
Click on.
See where the eraser is?
Yeah, click on.
No.
Is this an eraser?
You click on.
I'll be
The
your
eraser.
Oh, then this
I just
eraser.
erased it for you.
I need
To
a
go
back
back to
pen.
pen if you want to write.
Yeah.
It's right
Okay.
above the eraser spot.
I got it.
You're good.
Okay.
So it'd be this guy.
You're good now.
Wait, did somebody do that? Did somebody?
She's doing it for you. He's like, wow.
Magic.
Magical.
So much pressure with all these lights and technology. Okay, so the biology of stress. Now, this is a great talk because it's very interactive. I'd like to come up front and just talk with using PowerPoints. I love to be able to make sure they're all interactive, and I want the whole entire class to be involved. My goal by the end of today's talk is for everybody to be a biologist. I want you to understand the mechanism of stress and how we can avoid the stress response, or at least adapt to the stress response. Because it is estimated that over 80% of Americans have a stress issue, and almost 80% of all diseases are due to a stress response. There was a physician named Hans Selye back in the day who actually coined the term adaptive stress response, or general adaptive syndrome. And what he found was that there's 3 phases of stress. The first phase is what's known as the first phase of the stress response part of me. These lights are starting to distract me. But there's 3 phases of the stress. The first phase is the alarm stage. It's when we get scared, right? The second one is the adaptation stage. It's when the body's adapting to that stress response, and if it can't adapt, eventually it progresses to what's called fatigue or exhaustion, then cell death. Right? But the mechanism of stress is very interesting. If you think about the stress response, and you think about it from a physiological level, what has to happen in order for stress to occur? There has to be a cause. And there's number one cause in my clinic to all disease that I'm finding clinically. There's one cause to all disease, and that's actually a stressor. Stress. Now, when we talk about stress, most people think I'm talking about emotional stress. But really, I'm talking about trauma as well as terrain. So let's talk about trauma real quick. Trauma is anything biomechanically speaking. So, like for chiropractic biophysics, that's his specialty, Dr. specialty. When we look at a traumatic event, let's talk about from a musculoskeletal perspective. Has anybody ever sat before? Right? Has anybody ever played a sport before? All right, so most of us either sat or played a sport. Has anybody ever read before for a long period of time, right? All those stressors are actually a traumatic, stressful event inside the body. So from a biomechanical perspective, if we sit here and look around the room, and we see we have different postures happening now. We have somebody might be slumped forward, and I know a lot of you already started sitting upright, right? All those stressors over time create a biomechanical fault in the body, and what do they cause in the body?
I'm sorry, I'm focusing on the.
They cause the subluxation.
The subluxation of the body, yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
You're
No.
multitasking. But they cause subluxations in the joints. They cause muscles to become very, very tight. They cause nerve root compression to occur at different systems in the body. And it can affect all the organ systems. So from just a postural perspective, we can actually have a biomechanical flaw that can be causing pain or symptoms or stress in the body. But when I talk about stress, when people typically talk about stress, they think we're talking about emotional stress, right? But there's other factors, subclinical or subconscious factors, that can be contributing to all the stress we have inside our bodies. Now, if you think about it, if all stress accumulates, and if all stress summates, one stress that happened this morning, say the cold, that happened this morning, right? And then me coming here today with a delayed opening, let me talk about stress. This morning, I was asked to do 5 presentations today at 5 different schools. 2 here. One was in Gloucester this morning at 8, that was canceled. Another one was in Norwood, another one was in Northvale. I have another talk right after this, here, but then I got to zip to Northern Valley to give another talk at 1. So I didn't know this was postponed until, I think, 8 o'clock this morning. So talking about a stress response, and then you add cold on top of that. So if you can imagine, we all have these specific stress responses that occur to us. Now if you add the non-emotional, non-physical stress, or non-physical stresses to it, it just adds up over time. Right? And then stress continuously breaks down the body. Now that's trauma. Now, if we could break down trauma into biomechanical stressors, say for example, posture is a biomechanical stressor, traumatic injuries, has anybody ever been to a motor vehicle accident before, right? Or got hit by something, or if you played a sport, those are all traumas that occur physically to the body, right? Now, emotional trauma, that's the other type of trauma. And I know we've all had death or loss of loved ones, right? And that's the reason why I'm here today, is because somebody near and dear to me lost their life. My wife actually passed away. Jolene's mother passed away in 2011. And in 2011, I committed myself to want to be able to educate as many people as possible about their health. Because there's only one thing that we have in life that can make us most joyous, and that's our health. I don't care about the money, because you can't spend the money if you're sick. And we can't have good experiences with our family members if we're unhealthy. So rule number 1 is I think, to be healthy. And can anybody truly be healthy if they're unhappy? So that's rule number 2. And so my goal today, yes, is to teach about biology of your health. But I want you to learn how to eat better, how to move better, and how to think better today. And all stress accumulates inside the body. And traumatic stress, emotional stress, is a key contributing factor. And most of us, we think that we're able to adapt to stress very, very well. Who's ever heard of heart rate variability before? The heart rate variability is an assessment. I'm going to write on the board now. Oh, wait, actually, you know what you deserve?
What?
A shirt.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, take 2. You deserve another shirt. Okay, wait. Okay, all right, that has failed. Okay, you could give a shirt to somebody else.
Oh my gosh,
All right.
Debbie.
There you go. Teamwork, yes. All right, so when we look at heart rate variability, this is so weird. Look, there's my head. That is so cool. And then look, I can erase it.
You can. You can.
I can.
You just clear
You
it.
just click the eraser and then you can spread it across what you wrote,
Yeah.
or you can click this little Windex bottle.
Yeah, do the Windex bottle.
Windex.
See the little
Yeah.
Windex bottle?
Stand down.
Oh,
Right there.
there.
Oh,
No, there.
oh,
Oh.
right there.
And then you can clear
That's the first one.
and then let
There
the
you
board
go.
go.
Now,
But
now
then
you
put
gotta
it
go
back
back.
to because it's on the eraser. I got it.
That's so much fun. All right. So when we look at somebody's heart rate variability, what we should see is bumpies. And this is actually what's called a PQRS wave in Western medicine. So the more variability we have between the bottom and the top, the better the body can adapt to a stress response. Quite often what I see coming into the clinic is that. Now they're not dead. All right? They're not dead. It's not like a flat line. But when we have decreased variability, decreased bumpies, the body can't adapt to any stress very well. And when I see patients, and I do this test on them, and every patient gets this test, they're like, well, I don't have any stress in my life. I don't feel like I have stress. And what they're thinking about is emotional stress. But we could have subclinical stressors that could be driving whatever pain or symptom they might have. Who in this room has difficulty sleeping? Okay. Now, difficulty falling asleep or difficulty staying asleep? Okay. Who feels like sharing? Sharing a story about either sleep, not falling asleep, or waking up. Is it like a monkey mind? That your mind just chatters? Or is it just, you just can't fall asleep? Or do you wake up between 2 and 4 and have to go pee-pee and can't go back to bed? All right, you got a shirt too. Good job, good job, good job. All right, so let's talk about the 2 to 4 person. All right, the hours between 2 and 4 is actually, that looks like nothing. And what did, you guys know what I'm saying, all right? In Chinese medicine, the hours between 2 and 4 in the morning are actually the liver organ system. So what is the liver responsible for in Chinese medicine? Anxiety, anger, frustration. All right? So that's Chinese medicine. In Western medicine, blood gets pooled in the liver when we're sleeping. And it does that purposely because we want to be able to stabilize our blood sugar while sleeping. Now, say for example, you did not know you had a nightmare, say you had a nightmare. The body produces stress hormones, right? So when the body produces stress hormones, we have to produce more blood sugar to actually activate a stress response. So the liver that's storing all this blood actually produces something called glucagon, which is a hormone that brings blood sugar up in the system, in the body. So then we wake up. So while we're sleeping between that 2 and 4 window, we're having a holy crap response for whatever reason. Now the question is, why is that happening? And then more importantly, how do we fix it? It's a really quick solution. If you're that person that falls asleep but wakes up between 2 and 4, eat something fatty before you go to bed. That helps stabilize the sugar. So like a coconut oil, avocado, I'm a huge fan of coconut oil. Have like a tablespoon of that before you go to bed. You should be able to sleep much deeper for a longer period of time. Okay. Now let's talk about the person that can't fall asleep because of the monkey mind. All right, that's the rest of us, right? You know, I'm very fortunate I can fall asleep pretty easily, but I would wake up typically between the 2 and 4 as well. Now the people that wake up that can't fall asleep, typically that monkey mind, monkey chatter. Like they think about tomorrow, oh, did I turn out, oh, what the dishes have to be done, oh, I gotta make sure I do this, and they think about tomorrow, right? And it causes a lot of anxiety. So I'm going to teach you a strategy later on how to decrease that. Actually, you know what? I'll teach it to you now. Let's have everybody stand up. Let's do this now. Let's do this now. Let's do this now. You guys make me so excited. I don't know where to put this. Okay. All right. All right. Who's ever done like Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, breathing exercises? Some of us don't want to half committing. I'm going to teach you a very, very simple way for us to turn off our minds. Now, this is very difficult when you're lying in bed, so I'm going to teach you a different strategy. Okay? But the first thing we're going to do is actually a breathing exercise. So I want your feet about shoulder width apart, and I want a soft stance. Now make sure you don't punch the person next to you, unless you want to. I want you to take a deep breath in. As you inhale, breathe in. Exhale. As you exhale, imagine this bringing universal energy down to what's about an inch below your belly button. Okay? So if you can imagine, this is called the Dantian in Chinese medicine. We want to fill this cup up. So if you can imagine this being a cup, this is where all longevity lies in Chinese medicine. Okay? Now when we inhale, breathe in. Exhale, bring it down. Good, now inhale again. Exhale, bring it down. Inhale again. Exhale, bring it down. Good, last one, inhale. And exhale. And bring it down. Okay, now stand here, just your palms up. And just notice how you feel differently, just after taking about 3 or 4 breaths. Good. How do you feel differently now? Calm. Lightheaded, right? Yeah. Who feels like tingling into their hands, or even into the legs? Yeah. That in Chinese medicine is called qi. In Western medicine we call that oxygen. Okay? So isn't that wild? Now, but Evan, I'm lying down, I'm trying to go to sleep. How can I do this? Same thing, but just do it with your eyes closed and imagine yourself doing it. And probably after 5 to 10 breaths, you'll start noticing that the mind just stops chattering. Pretty cool, right? As if you take a seat with me. And this is one simple exercise that you could do daily. That would help calm the mind. Okay? Because I know we all are under stress. Now, what's interesting about, we're still on trauma now. I'll get into train in a minute. Who's ever heard of two stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol? Probably everybody in this room, right? Now, adrenaline is a short burst. Adrenaline should only last about 20 minutes. So if we are attacked or we're under a stress response, we should reduce adrenaline, and it should only stay in circulation for about 20 minutes. Cortisol, on the other hand, should stay in circulation about 2 to 3 to 4 hours. Now, there's instances where cortisol stays elevated for up to 19 hours. Now, isn't that interesting? Why would it jump from 3 or 4 hours up to 19 hours under a stress response? Because when we have an underactive thyroid, who in this room has been diagnosed with an underactive thyroid? Probably almost every woman in this room. If not, most of you have a subclinical hypothyroid, even men, because 80% of the population, according to a 200,000 hair mineral test study that was done, have an underactive metabolism. And we do a hair mineral test, which I'm going to go into later. But an underactive metabolism will cause cortisol to stay in circulation for up to 19 hours. So let's talk about the stress response. Okay, what happens when we get scared? So I'm walking down the street and a mountain lion jumps out. Do I have to worry about procreating or delivering a baby at that point in time? Or worry about my immune system? Like if I have a cold or flu and I get attacked by a mountain lion, do you think I'd give a crap about my cold or flu? Hello, how are you?
How are you?
Good to see you.
I was trying just to sneak.
So do I have to worry about that cold or flu at that present time? Under a stress response, no, because it's survival. If I twist my ankle while I'm running away from a mountain lion, do I have to worry about my ankle being fractured at that time? No, because it's survivability. So under a stress response, our number one goal is to survive. Right? We don't have to worry about digestion either. We're going to poop ourselves and run, right? We're just going to get away from that situation as fast as possible. So we produce adrenaline for 20 minutes. It stays in circulation. We produce cortisol under stress response. Should be in circulation for about 3 to 4 hours unless we're hypometabolic or have an underactive thyroid, which could stay in our system for up to 19 hours. Now, when adrenaline gets produced, what happens to the heart rate? Increases, right? What happens to the blood pressure? Yeah, because you just had a whole crap response. A bear just attacked you, right? And then cortisol, what happens with cortisol? When cortisol elevates, what do you think happens to your lipid profile? Do you think it switches towards good cholesterol or bad cholesterol? Now, it's funny how we all know what good or bad cholesterol is. I challenge you to think like this. Adaptive cholesterol versus unadaptive cholesterol. So under a stress response, the body has to adapt the cholesterol profile to more of an LDL, which is categorized as bad cholesterol, so that we don't bleed out if I scratch you, if you're being attacked by a mountain lion or a bear. So think about this. I'm going to repeat that again. Under a stress response, we produce cholesterol that's supposed to stop us from bleeding to death, which just so happens to be the cholesterol that in Western medicine is called bad cholesterol. So really, is it bad cholesterol, or are we under constant stress responses that's causing the cholesterol to rise? Now, when cortisol also gets elevated, what do you think happens to the blood sugar? Do we need fuel to run away or not? Right? So we need fuel to run away. So if I scare you, thank you for laughing. I'm going to give you a gift too. What can I give you? Let me see. I have something for you, I swear. You're getting a free massage at our office.
I wish you
Just laugh more often at my jokes, and we're going to get a free massage. Alright, so we're like, cortisol, right? So under a stress response, so under cortisol elevates. So under a response of cortisol elevation, blood sugar has to increase. Because we need fuel to go to the muscle so we can run like a bat out of hell away from the mountain lion. Understand? So then what happens to our ability to regulate sugars? What's the hormone that makes us fat? Insulin. So if blood sugar, I get this midsection weight that occurs, yeah. Now can you imagine if we're under stress on a daily basis, say somebody cuts you off on your way to work. Adrenaline, 20 minutes. But what about that stupid cortisol? And since 80% of us have an underactive metabolism, it stays in circulation for 19 hours. So their sugar becomes dysregulated, our lipid profile becomes dysregulated, we're more at risk of cardiovascular disease, weight gain, obesity, other hormonal dysregulation as well. Because under a stress response, do we need blood flow going to the reproductive system? No. So the men get prostatitis, when we get menopause. Right? Menopause, a lot of countries, menopause, you don't have to go through the hot flashes. Very common in America. It's not common in other countries. Wait, you're saying that you go through menopause without hot flashes? Yes. And we're going to go into the stress response more when I go over a mineral analysis that we do in our practice. Okay.
I'll share.
Please.
Menopause. Age 40, in and out, Don didn't even realize it because of stress. The doctor said, how'd you handle hot flashes? I said, I'm always hot. I didn't even realize it. But within 6 months, you're like, oh, you're nowhere near it. And then totally done, in and out of my system.
Can you imagine
All
that?
the stress.
Yeah. You get a gift. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you.
We should all have the same dad.
But I thank you for sharing. But that's pretty much under stress response. What happens? Blood flow gets shunted. Now, there's Paul MacLean was this PhD researcher back in the 70s and 80s, and what he found was that there's 3 brains we have. Now, if we dive a little bit further, there's three brains and there's 3 brains. Okay, so we have the brain, the head brain, the heart brain, and we have the digestive brain. Okay, and then in the head itself, we have 3 brains as well called the triune brain. Who's familiar with this? The triune brain is actually the reptilian brain. So who's seen this hand model before? I know this is very common in the mind-body practices. If you can imagine, in through here is the reptilian brain. It's a digestive system that allows us to do anything we want to do. In order for you guys to hear me, you need to have the 12 cranial nerves working very well, harmoniously, in order for you to breathe, eat, etc. Everything that's subconscious resides in the reptilian brain. And this brain is a dumb, stupid brain. It just wants to fornicate, pass on its seed, it wants to eat, it wants to breathe, and it wants to live. It's only for survival purposes. Spread my semen or my eggs, and that's it, and procreate. That's all it wants to do. If you ever look at a reptile, they're not the smartest creatures. You can't be like, come here, Toto. Right? They're not going to come to you unless they want to eat you. Right? That's it. That's all its function. You want to know another fact, which is really cool? The neural tube in utero was the skin and the nervous system were once the same. How wild is that? So if I come and I touch your palm, I just poked your brain. Right? So that's one of the mechanisms by which acupuncture works. And massage works, and chiropractic works, right? And physical therapy works, right? It's through the mechanism what's called proprioception. So proprioception is where our bodies are in space. So let's have you raise your left arm up. Perfect. Everybody raise your left arm. Very happy about that. Now how do we know, so have you close your eyes. How do we know your left arm is up? You can feel it, right? But there's feedback loops from the hand, the arm, the shoulder to the brain. Right? Same thing happens when we're in pain, same thing happens when we have a disease. You can bring your arm down. Same thing happens if we have a chronic illness, right? It's all about the nervous system and the body's response to that stressor. So it's pretty wild how the body's created. It's magnificent. So in utero, the nervous system and the skin are once the same. So the brain and the skin are once the same, which is pretty wild. So the reptilian brain. Now we have all these nerves that come out of the brain, right? And C1, C2, the upper cervical spine, which we're going to do a test on somebody later, right? C1 and C2 are highly innervating the spinal cord and nervous system. So if you have a subluxed C1, C2, right, it's going to affect your ability for your nervous system to function. It's going to affect your everything, for how you digest your foods, to structural alignment and support. if that one segment is either tight or the bone is rotated. So the reptilian brain is extremely important for us to live and survive. Now, let's talk about the mammalian brain. How do we have memories? Think about this. Where are all the memories stored? And how are they stored? Have you guys ever been to a situation? Who remembers where they were on 9/11? Who remembers what they were wearing on 9/11? I don't remember. But who remembers either a smell or a sight or something on 9/11? Probably everybody in this room. Every memory in our life is actually a memory of an emotion that's linked to a memory, either good, bad, or indifferent. So if we ever had a traumatic event, a death of a loved one, it's stored in the mammalian system. It's stored in the limbic system, the amygdala of the brain. So that's the mammalian brain. That's where all the emotional centers are. Now the neocortex, so if here's the reptilian brain, right there's the mammalian brain, and then neocortex comes over the top. This is the front part of the brain. That's where all language and communication, we're in this room and we're civil because we have a neocortex. We're not a dumb reptile, right? Because when my wife passed, right? I had to do a lot of emotional clearing on that because every time I got out to talk to people about it, I'd get emotional about it, right? So I needed to be able to talk freely about it without being like stuck there. And so you tap on certain acupuncture points as you're thinking about the stress response, right? And then over time, it just clears it out. And I'll teach it to everybody if you guys want. I can maybe send a video to you, and if anybody wants it, they leaves the brain, the frontal lobe rather. It goes to the dumb brain. Blood flow leaves the digestive system, reproductive system. It leaves the immune system. So think about the top 3 causes of death in America. We have cardiovascular disease, which is number 1. We have cancer, which is number 2. And who's ever heard of iatrogenic diseases? Physician-caused death is number 3. So the top 3 causes of death in America are the top 2 are due to a stress response. And do you think medication will actually support a deficiency that somebody might be having that might be causing a stress response? Sometimes no. I mean, I've had people come in and they're on 15 medications, but I did the heart rate variability on them, and I did the hair mineral test, and they look pretty darn good. You know, so I'm not saying medications don't work. However, over medications sometimes hurt people, and often do. Okay, any questions so far? Good.
Is that heart rate variability of like a basic EKG, or you do
A
something?
little bit different. It is similar to the AKG, but we're stressing you out, so we're running this room screaming. Just kidding. You're lying down for about 5 or 6 minutes, and then you're standing for about 5 or 6 minutes. And just the transition from lying down to standing is the stressor.
I see.
And so when we're lying down, we're looking at the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest response. And then when we're standing, we're looking at the stress response of activity. And then depending Yes. Whose hand was up when they said they had about it? Did I miss anybody? Alright, so let me tell you about leaky gut syndrome. Because it is extremely important for everybody to understand this. Did you know that we have 10 times more bacteria than we have cells in our body? Do you know that the human genome is it's our bacteria that give us the experience of life. I'll let that sink in for a second. So it's our bacteria that give us the experience. So let's talk about the gut. There's something called dysbiosis. And dysbiosis is, so dys is bad, right? Or not regular. And then biosis is life. So bad life or dysregulated life or unregulated life, imbalanced life in our gut. It is estimated that over 80% of Americans, even 80% of people in the world, they have what's called gut dysbiosis. They don't have enough good bacteria in the gut to offset bad bacteria. So what would be a bad bacteria? Like fungus, a parasite, a yeast, right? That's what actually will grow and flourish in the gut if we don't have enough good biome in the gut, or good bacteria in the gut. Now, what causes the gut biome to become disrupted? And then, when it becomes disrupted, what happens to the food stuff that enters our gut, and where does that go? All right, so what causes it to be disrupted? Actually, you know what? Let's back that up. Let's talk about what happens when somebody has gut dysbiosis, because this is really disgusting. All right, so say I had that cookie. I love that cookie. It's so beautiful. I love it. But say I had that cookie.
Wait, let me eat it first.
Say I had that cookie, and say there is something called wheat in that cookie. A recent study came out in Harvard that showed that 100% of all human beings cannot digest gluten. 100%. So not just like 1%, 3%. 100% of human beings cannot digest gluten. 100%. And do you know what they did? They actually had hydrochloric acid, and they put it into a dish, and they put gluten in the dish. And the hydrochloric acid did not break it down. It stayed the same. Now, if you think about a cow that has multiple stomachs, or ruminant animals, they have different chambers in their stomach that can eventually break it down. Humans only have one stomach. So with the inability for us to break down that gluten, the food stuff passes through our stomach into our small intestine and produces a molecule called zonulin. And zonulin actually causes what's called the tight junction. So if you can imagine, in our intestines that are about 20 to 25 feet long, we have these little holes in our intestines, right? And what's supposed to pass through these intestines, and the reason why the intestines are so long is because over time what should happen is food stuff gets broken down by the enzymes, by the bile salts, and it should be broken down into small pieces, like cut up, like little scissors cutting paper. And it should pass the tight junctions and into the bloodstream. And that's where all the minerals are, and enzymes, amino acids, essential fatty acids. They pass through the intestinal wall, they go into the bloodstream, and that's what feeds our cells, our organs, etc. Now, what happens when we have So why do I say for my patients, Monday through Friday, don't have it on the weekends? Because by the time next weekend comes around, their gut's going to be healed up again. all right? I want my patients to enjoy life. I don't have it. I'll have pizza every 3 to 4 months, right? Jolene doesn't have it either. She'll have it occasionally. But the reason why I say 3 to 4 months is because we can have that cookie, and if you have an autoimmune response to that cookie, I'm just picking on your cookies, it's there, right? Don't be like, I'm gonna have a little bit today and then I'm gonna a little bit tomorrow. No, because that little bit pokes the same amount of holes in the gut as having a lot of it on that day. Okay, I know we're gonna wrap it up. But any questions? To sum it up. Sum it up. So we got 3 brains. Now, why is the gut so important? Because there's a nerve that runs from the gut to the brain. So if we have stinking thinking, it could be from the foods we're eating, giving a feedback mechanism to the brain, telling the reptilian brain to start becoming more active. Because that stress response is going to get a holy crap response, causing adrenaline response, cortisol response, causing everything to be discussed already. Does that make sense?
So if we stay away from gluten, that won't happen.
Chances are it might not happen.
Really?
Do I have a minute? Do I have a minute?
Okay, good.
All right. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do this, clear all, do not, okay, cool. All right, so,
Pen.
back to pen. All right, so, real quick, back to, okay, calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium. So, under stress responses, this is what happens. Can you guys read that? How do you write on this board? So, under stress response, calcium goes up. Under stress response, magnesium drops. Under stress response, sodium goes up. Under stress response, potassium goes down. The chalkboard's not chalk. If I drop the chalk in here, what's happening to the chalk? It's going to crack. That's calcium bicarbonate. I'm sorry, calcium carbonate. Our bones are made of calcium bicarbonate. Okay? Now, if I was just calcium by itself, what would happen if I did this to you? I'm going to break your bone. It's magnesium that gives the strength support to bone. Because calcium by itself is very, very brittle. Does that make sense? Okay.
Now I'm all confused, because don't we get, like, people over 50 have to take caltrate, isn't that the same thing as calcium for your bones?
Yes?
So meanwhile, I have to take it twice a day, I'm like very religious, because I don't want my bones to be brittle, now you're telling me I shouldn't be taking it.
That's correct.
Now I'm really confused.
Yes, and you should be. Because when physicians do blood work or bone density scan, they're looking at what's happening right now. So if you took that's why they take your blood work on an empty stomach. Right? If you ate food, the blood chemistry is going to change. What I like doing a hair mineral test. So I take a biopsy of the hair, send it up to a lab. And from that data, I can figure out where you are deficient in your minerals. So I customize what you need. Versus, you know what, you're this age, so you have to be on this. Or you're this, you have to be on this. There's no customization. You are totally different than you, and you're totally different than you, and you're totally different than you. Everybody has their biochemical individuality. I would have this just get a mineral test done. And that's, your insurance covers everything.
A mineral test?
Hair mineral test,
Hair mineral.
yeah.
And who gives that?
I do.
Just a regular doctor?
I do.
Well, when I get one for myself.
When you come, well, here, who did not get a free massage? Alright,
Thank you.
so,
Does it come with a babysitter?
it does not come with a babysitter. You know what? But you might have someone in the household that you want to give to.
Oh, thanks.
Alright, so this massage also includes a free